host, Julia Napini. I am a clinical and forensic social worker who owns a counseling practice and a consulting business. In this show, we discuss the challenges of being successful in business while maintaining your integrity and staying true to yourself. Join me while I interview other professionals and share insights from life and experience. Let's talk about RingRx, our latest sponsor. RingRx is a high-quality, HIPAA-compliant telephone, text, and fax communications platform. They provide seamless, cost-effective communications for behavioral therapists, medical practices, hospitals, and other healthcare providers. RingRx is designed for modern healthcare environments. They offer customizable features like a phone app, automated patient outreach, voicemail, after-hours call routing, and top-quality desk phones. Try RingRx for free today at ringrx.com. And if you sign up using the code CLIMB, you'll get 15% off your monthly bill forever. Conditions apply. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Compassionate Climb podcast. This is my new BFF. I feel like I've known her my whole life. So our guest today is somebody who I first heard speak at Meet You in Kentucky last year. Thank you, Casey Compton. And I returned this year as a speaker. She was a fellow speaker, and I went again. And we attended a speaker dinner, and we ended up sitting next to each other and talked the night away about all things IFS, business, group practice, leadership. And she is just one of the most wholesome, kind, genuine people. And you'll all see that here today. So Rachel Bentley, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Those were very kind words, and I feel very similar. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, it's been great getting to know you better. I always appreciate knowing that there are group practices out there that are being run by individuals like you that operate from a place of integrity, care about your team in the ways that we do. And I'd love to believe that all group practice owners expand with that same intention. But I think in a lot of ways, when we're in a position of leadership, our stuff can come out. And I love how you use IFS in all aspects of your life, but particularly this practice and in your leadership. So let's back it up a little bit before we get there. Share your career climb with everyone. How did you get to be managing the group practice that you do now and all of your other pursuits?
Yeah. So again, thank you for the kind words. And yes, I know we'll dig into IFS, but I think it's so integral as a leader and as a business owner. But I guess what I would say, this is what I always say at first, I started my practice. It was just me, and it was really an exit strategy to what I call get out of the systems. I was in state government for about 10 years, doing some various things. And it was one of those, no one ever leaves. No one ever leaves. We're paid well. We have good benefits. We have consistency. So like many people said, you're never leaving. Because I was talking about leaving in around year 2 of the 10. And so I started my practice as sort of an exit strategy and thought, well, if I can just make a similar amount of money, because I think I'll be good at this. Yeah. If I could make a similar amount of money, I'll leave. And so that was like sort of the start of it. And I had a couple of folks that worked with me in state government that were like the rock stars of the office. And I asked them if they wanted to come sort of start a gig part-time with me, see clients. So it really started with just me. And then the two of them sort of came around a couple of months later. We were all doing part-time therapy. We shared one office in a building of many other random businesses. It was really sort of a makeshift situation. And we all worked 2 nights a week, right? Because we shared one space. And we started to realize, this is going well. We're filling our caseloads. We're really loving what we're doing. And so we expanded from there. But interestingly, this was in 2019. And about 6 or 7 months in, COVID hit. And we were this small group of 3 or 4. I think we were at 4 at that point. Yeah. We had just expanded into a bigger office. And COVID hit. Of course, we all know the story. It changed the way we do business. Telehealth became a thing. And I I know we'll talk about parts, but there was a part of me that was like, either we're going to turn people away because we all got full pretty quick, as we all did at that time,
Yeah.
or we're going to grow this group. We're going to hire folks. And so I started hiring and built it into this group practice over the next like couple of years. But it wasn't the best way. It wasn't the best way to make a decision about growth, because what happened is we were around a group of 20 or 25 when I realized, oh, we don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the systems. I don't have a leadership team. I can't do all this alone. And so it was it was sort of a backwards, talk about the climb. It was like back down the hill of rebuilding, restructuring, building all of our processes, becoming consistent. And that was really painful. And so I always look back at that and think, wow, that was the hard road. I kind of have a history of, I did everything the hard way. And so I sort of took that experience, and along the road of like systemizing and automating and hiring a wonderful team around me, people started coming and asking, like, how'd you do this? How do you scale? How do you all do your own billing? Lots of curiosity. And I know you've experienced this, lots of like, can I pick your brain? And so it became me saying to myself, well, I have to put some boundaries around this. I'm already sort of unofficially supporting other people. And so maybe I have to develop a consulting business now, because I have to actually decide what I want and how much time I want to spend and what I actually want to do in supporting others. So that's how my consulting company, Next Level, was born, was sort of out of all of that. And I do enjoy that aspect of my work, but I also, again, I wanted to define for myself what my balance was and what kind of work I want to do on that side. So
I can relate to so much of your trajectory.
Yes.
And the part that I'm hearing that I think you would agree to, that I know is the case for me, I am such a better consultant because of the times in my group practice that I stumbled and I had to pivot and course correct and do things differently. And just like anything in life, we want to do it properly, in the right order. We want to follow a map. That's what everybody's looking for. But I wouldn't have mine so clearly and concretely and be able to guide other people in the way that I do as a business consultant if I didn't have some of those pain points and learning curves in my group practice. Would you agree? So it all served a purpose.
I do agree. I mean, I look back and go, wow, like you should have worked with a consultant sooner. And I don't think we're saying that because we're consultants, but if there would have been, and there were people there along the way that mentored me and helped me, but just to have, like you said, some sort of blueprint or mentorship or like that would have been great. But yes, I did. I wish I would have sought that out sooner. I did seek that out when we were in that process of building process for the practice. But yes, we learned a lot about what to do and what not to do to make, the practice sort of as best as it could be or as good as it can be.
So give us a snapshot of your team now, the size, the structure, the leadership. What does it look like today?
So we have around 40 clinicians. I think we're at maybe 38. I always say between 35 and 40 because there's always a little bit of an ebb and flow. We have two admin-based folks. So we have our intake coordinator, which we sort of intake coordinator, client care, same thing.
Sure.
And our intake coordinator was a therapist in our practice. She still is actually, but she said, hey, I'm getting burned out in the chair, which we often do. Do you have anything else I can do? And so that's been a really valuable asset for us to have a therapist in that chair. And she's done an amazing job. We also have a practice manager that helps with operations and helps see things I don't always see because I can't see it all. And then we have a couple of clinical supervisors that help us with clinical supervision. So as far as like a leadership team is concerned, and then we also have our admin manager, Brooke, is the person that does all back office, credentialing, billing, accounts payable, receivable, like looking at all of those back office logistics.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So as a leadership team, we really support all of our clinicians in the work that they do. And that is a big value for me, is having relationships with them, helping them understand they're valued, being transparent, offering feedback. And that goes both ways. I elicit a lot of feedback as the owner as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that we have, at least in my mind, we have a healthy culture. People enjoy being there.
Yeah.
And we have a pretty good retention. We have folks that have been with us for years. Sometimes folks leave to start their own practice, and we expect that to happen. But for the most part, there's a lot of stability and consistency for our clients. So that's awesome. Yeah,
what a great place to be. I mean, obviously, it's so important to consider how you got there and that it wasn't necessarily always easy, but how wonderful to be able to take a step back for a moment and to be at a place where you have a team that size, a positive culture, it's profitable, and you're able to provide such a positive experience not only to your staff, but for the clients that seek out those services. So well done.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
I would love to hear how internal family systems and parts work transition for you from the therapy space to everything else, how you lead, how you manage this team. So fill everyone in on how you made that transition. I'm assuming once you learn about it, you can't unsee it. And
yeah. I mean, that is, it's there's parts everywhere, because our parts are what show up in the room. And I guess what I would say about IFS in general terms is that going through IFS level 1, which is sort of the Institute's foundational training, what they don't really tell you is that you're actually going to be learning a lot about your own parts. And there's going to be tons of vulnerability. Yes, you're learning a model and you're hearing the lecture, but you're practicing as the therapist, as the client. Like, it's a continuous, for me, it's like intensity, right? And I thought, wow, like, I remember being in level 1 and going, they kind of tricked me. Like, I thought I was coming in to get like a lecture, because, like, we'll get lectured and we'll get like the resources in the workbook and the manual, and then we'll try to apply it, right? Like in a lot of models. But this was really all about learning about yourself and the parts that show up in your life, in all aspects of your life. And it was actually scary, intense. There's so many things I could say about it, but it did start me on this journey about learning about my own parts and learning about when in the IFS model, I was more self-led, and being in self is, being who we are, being authentic, showing up in, I said authentic, but in this authentic way, and grounded and calm and clear and confident. There are 8 C's of self-energy, lots of C words, but I had to really look at, like, at what moments do I have some self-energy, and at what moments am I really activated and sort of part-led, right? Because if you have no self-energy, it typically means there's a part leading in your system. So it was really learning about me and how, as a therapist, as a business owner, as a leader, as a partner, as a mother, as a, like, all of these things that I am, it was like starting of the deep dive, and then continuing to be an IFS consultation to sharpen clinical skills, but also to continue in IFS therapy as a client, which I still am involved in 3 years later. And so it's just been this ever evolving, like, healing journey for me. But me being able to identify all that in myself has helped me in all of these other roles and helped others access their self-energy. So I'm bringing that in to consulting, to clinical supervision, as a therapist, I guess all the things.
Wonderful. Yeah. So with your team specifically, how do you incorporate this when you're hiring, when you're meeting with people, to do your check-ins and get feedback when someone's coming to you with a problem? Any examples that you can think of as a leader when you're meeting with a clinician, utilizing IFS, as opposed to if you didn't have this skill set and this knowledge, and how it plays out differently as a result?
So the first example I would say is more like an internal one of, I had a clinician that I wasn't quite sure before I did a lot of my own work around what was so activating about being in the room with this clinician. And we had a few conversations. She would often kind of start some drama or right like that. I don't know how. I don't want to say anything negative, but like, so there was a lot of like, she didn't get along. She didn't play well with others, right? And it was. That's what I'll say. And it was me, I started noticing like, wow, like I'm really avoiding holding her behavior accountable. I'm avoiding having a difficult conversation, right? Like, and I learned like there was sort of this people pleasing part at the forefront, this part that wants people to like me and wants people like essentially to be happy in the practice, to like enjoy their jobs. And there's a lot more to that from past experience of being in jobs that weren't great. But I realized after doing my own work, I was like, I have to go in and have a direct conversation with accountability and feedback and all the things I knew from some leadership training I had done. But that was one of the first moments where I was like, wow, my parts have been leading me as a business owner. Mm-hmm. And it has been a detriment for the business. And it's been a detriment for some of the other clinicians in my group because this person was impacting them negatively as well. Yes. And so that's like the first, in terms of doing my own work and like reflecting. Mm-hmm. But in terms of how I like use IFS, one example would be in clinical supervision. I will talk a lot about, okay, you can present your case and talk about your client, but let's pull the 8 C's out. I really love to know, like, what do you have any of these elements in your system as you talk about this client, as you think about this client? Like, what is actually happening in your system when you're in the chair with this client? And they're like, well, no, I want to talk to you about treatment planning and diagnosis. And like,
right, you're like, slow it down.
I want you to tell me what to do. And like, so I'm like, well, let's pause. Let's get curious about what's happening for you. And maybe we call it like transference, countertransference sometimes, but what about, and let's get curious about what this client's eliciting parts of you. And let's get curious about what those are.
Yeah.
So that's been effective. And I know with my leadership team, if they were here, they'd laugh and go, we already know what you're going to say, because I will speak for my parts. I'll say, hey, we just had a team meeting and something came up around a clinician in the group. And I said, this is a part talking, but I have this part that wants everyone to be happy. And that part says this. But in conflict, I have another part that's really angry. This is happening. So I'll sort of like externalize because often our parts will have one over here and one over here, and they're in conflict. So I'll externalize that to the team and go, but if I really pause and take a moment here and I consult with self, have some self energy, what I really know to be true, or what I really think we should have a lot of clarity about what we should actually do. But these parts are chiming in. So they hear me talk about my parts often, and they know that I'm going to ask them about theirs.
So this is fascinating. I have several questions. The first thing that I want to ask is, this clearly requires a level of vulnerability on your part.
Yes.
I'm assuming some trust in your team. And I would assume that as you're more likely to do what you just described, you're paving the way for your team to do the same. Is there anything that you have done beyond modeling this that has created that psychological safety for you to feel comfortable doing that, and in turn for your team members to do the same?
Well, building those relationships with them over time, I think is one piece of it. And I think as you interact with people, you get sort of a sense of like, is their system prepared? Do they have enough self to take this feedback or to have a difficult conversation? Like, how does this go sort of over and over when I try to do it with someone, right? And if I can see, for example, like it's easy when we get feedback to get defensive, right? And I might get defensive and go, ooh, that defensiveness is there. Like I'm aware. but I'm not going to respond from that. I'm going to be aware. So I might say to my team, like, I'm noticing, like, are you feeling sad? Are you feeling defensive? Like, what's actually happening? Let's just talk about that. Let's name that. Let's externalize that. And some people over time have been like, I don't know what you're talking about, Rachel, right? Like, there isn't a willingness. The system's very protected. And so, but I can gauge that with folks typically. Sure. And so I do trust my team because they're open with me. I'm open with them. Now I have hired folks on my team that wasn't the case, right? And that it maybe, and I'm not saying it didn't work out because of that, sure. But they're protectors, as IFS called, our protective parts are here to protect us. And their systems were so protective that they couldn't ever take in feedback. Mm-hmm. Or maybe we didn't have a value alignment, right? Like things just weren't in alignment. And for those folks, you know, they eventually left. Mm-hmm. Right. And so, yes.
So it's serve as a filter.
Yes. I mean, we all show up with some, and I think we always have to name the power differential, because as much as I think my team trusts me and I trust them, I am at the top of this hierarchy. And as much as I want to be like friends and like colleagues, and definitely like there are elements of that, but also no matter what, like I am the boss, right? And I have to respect, and I don't misuse that power, but I have to respect that there is that power differential, and there's always going to be elements of that in the room with us, right?
So thinking back on the examples you provided, it sounds like you incorporate I'm trying to think of the exact verbiage you use, but so for leaders that are listening, or for practice owners that are listening, if they want to start to incorporate IFS with their team, some of the things that they can start to do is obviously use the C's in case conceptualization or in interactions. What is coming up for you? How are they showing up? Activated. I think that's the word you use.
I use activated versus triggered.
Yeah. Digging a little bit deeper as to what is really going on there. What else would you say are some ways that this can start to be incorporated for those that work among a team?
You know, that's when I think about that question, people will say, well, you obviously can start with the modeling piece. Like, let me tell you, I'm not perfect. Let me tell you, I have an inner critic that bashes me every time I make a mistake, right? When someone makes a mistake, right? Let's actually put that out into the room, into the world. I don't want really any topic to be off limits. I mean, obviously we set boundaries with like personal stuff, but I want you to be able to bring the hard stuff in, and I guess encouraging that. But I'm going to go back to the biggest piece of this is knowing our own system well enough first, because it's really hard to incorporate it with others. Like, oh yeah, like you have an angry part that's up. Because by the way, if you just call people's parts out, that doesn't go well, especially in your personal relationships. Please don't do that. Disclaimer. It doesn't work. But it's really like knowing your own system and knowing how you're responding and being aware of those elements, which you could do that by doing your own IFS therapy, by like learning some of the IFS modality and sort of applying it to yourself.
Yeah.
But when we think about like, if with our teams, if they have parts that are always sort of, one analogy I use is with IFS is we're a school bus, and hopefully self is driving most of the time. By the way, we cannot be in self all the time. We cannot be self at 100%, but hopefully self is driving. Our parts are behind us on the bus. And when activation occurs, the parts stand up, they walk to the front, and they're like, I'm going to drive, right? Because I'm here to protect you. Right. And so when we think about, so I'll use that analogy with the team, and I'll say, well, what part do you think is trying to drive right now? Like, what do you think? And depending on their level of awareness, they're like, this isn't a part. I'm just mad at you. Right. Or whatever. And so, well, yeah, but you're not just mad all the time. Right. So I'll try to work on helping them become more aware of their system. Yeah. I think the key to that is not judging people. Right. I'm really curious about what what about what I just said made you so angry? Like, I'm not judging the anger. I can sit here in the anger with you. I can hold the anger with you. But I wonder if we can step back and get curious about anger, defensiveness, avoidance, like any of the issues that we may see within our team. I'm just wondering if you and I can get curious. And I don't always get a great response. But if there's enough self in the system, they're like, oh man, Rachel's right. I'm not like an angry person every moment. Maybe I do need to get curious. And typically, right, there's a lot more to it, but typically our parts are running to the front of that bus trying to take over because they're trying to protect us from something.
Right.
Which is typically, if we go through the whole model, it's typically like our negative core beliefs that are activated, or IFS calls these exiles. Right? But our exiles are getting activated, and then these protective parts are coming up to protect us from not feeling that stuff. Right. Yeah. If you can imagine trying to hold, like, your team makes a mistake, you're trying to hold them accountable, they suddenly feel like a failure. When they feel like a failure, it means they're worthless. I mean, I'm really right. But I mean, it's deep seated and it's tied to past experiences. And so it's not like we can like stop and do the IFS model with them, but we can help them be more aware of, hey, you're not acting like yourself right now. I wonder if we can get curious about like, if there's a part involved in this, and if it could step back. Yeah. And if we can have more clarity, or we can have more of a conversation where you can actually take in what I'm saying. Because we've all been there where someone starts talking to us and blank, like we don't remember what they said. We didn't take in any of it. Right. And can't we typically tell when our team or our clients go there? Yeah. So I don't know if I'm giving you the tangible thing you're asking me for. But that's just like in the way that I think about it. Yeah.
But I also think you're putting it in context. As you're walking us through, I can envision you in an interaction with a team member and somebody who is activated, and you're giving the actual verbiage of how you would approach that so that you can come to either it's a resolution or more clarity, or get to a point where you can have that conversation, which is so important. So I'm thinking of this concept of being a self-led leader and being in self more often than not. What are the things that you have found helpful to strive for that? Sounds like doing your own work for sure. Yes. Your knowledge and awareness of this and incorporating it in your day-to-day. But what else has been helpful?
So I would say, like, just going back a minute to the doing your own work part, like the idea that we become activated, because we're going to become activated. It's just a matter of like, will we have choice about whether self continues to lead or a part, or parts begin to lead. So like that in choice is actually a recent ninth C that's been added to the elements of self energy. And choice means when I'm at the crossroads where the part is at the front of the bus with me, do I know them well enough to be like, hey, I know you're here to protect me, but I'm going to drive. Right. I'm going to lead us through this tough situation. So part of it is not just being aware of them, but actually building relationship between self and part. Like that's the crux of the model. Like I may spend a ton of time in therapy helping people, in my own, helping like the parts trust self enough for us to continue to lead. Right. And so there's some strategy behind that. But I would say for people that aren't trained in IFS, because you don't have to be to do this, but it's just like noticing, being aware. Oh man, I just got really defensive or really angry or really frustrated or really dissociative or really like whatever it is. And wow, I need to like take note and get curious. And one of the things I'll say is the most helpful thing when you're starting to learn about your own system in this way is when you do notice something, like maybe you look back and go, that wasn't me. That's not how I would typically respond. Try to map out what you noticed about that part, right? What did that part say? What was the narrative? Were there feelings in your body, right? how did that part show up and express itself? Because if you externalize the parts in some way, you'll become much more aware of them.
Absolutely. Because then you can
Yeah.
examine them externally as opposed
Outside
to
of
internally where it gets
yourself.
all muddled.
Yeah. So that's what I would say. Like, as the leader, it's like, just get curious and notice and try to map out, document. Some people like to journal in words. Some people like to draw it out, paint it out. There's a lot of ways, but just to notice, like, wow, I notice that every time, like I said, I'm in the room with this clinician, I start feeling this like anxiety and, pain. And I realized that was actually attributed to like fear of judgment as well, which is another big one for me.
Yeah.
So when I perceive someone will judge me, that's really painful. And all these protectors like come up to save me, so to speak. And so but being able to externalize that is just a great first step for the leader. And the other thing is, if you can get your parts to step back enough to give you some space, and you're holding self energy, you can also sort of lend that to the people on your team, because a calm system meeting an activated system, and we know this just with like regulation, our calmness can help them calm. Right. So it's this idea of like lending self. But if someone at your team like comes at you in some way, if you're activated and they're activated and you're activated, it's sort of like, child and parent, where your child gets really activated and then you both puff up and get bigger in the conflict. So we know nothing good is going to come of if we're super activated and part led. So we have to try to hold that self energy at very least, if we can.
Absolutely. Oh, that's so helpful. We could talk about this forever, but I want to get to your summit.
Yes.
As someone who is a conference and retreat attendee and you speak, I would love to know, and you consult, how this idea of your own summit came about, and a little bit of the behind the scenes planning and getting this going, and then share the details with everyone.
Oh man, the planning. So my idea was, and this is just me and how I get, part of this is part led, honestly, with the summit, because I have been feeling isolated in the work that I do. Like and that's why it's so cool that the two of us got to meet, because I don't get to meet a lot of folks that are doing consulting and group practices and like understand some of these nuances. Before the summit, when I started the consulting company, I thought, man, if I can plan an event where we can bring private practice folks together to like reduce that isolation and like make these kinds of connections, wow, that would be cool. Like, that's my dream to like do that. So that's where it started, is sort of this, hey, we want more connection. We want more community. And I have myself, and I'm sure you have too, found that in these different conferences, retreats and such, where we've met like-minded folks and folks that vibe with us and share, similar energies. And so that's really what I want, and I want more and more of it. So that was where it sort of started, right? Like that need for connection. And connection is also one of the 8 C's of self-energy, I must say. When we feel connected to others, healthy connection, that re-energizes us, that helps us heal. It can be very healing to have this kind of connection, and just someone that you feel like understands some of the plights that we face.
Well, and side note, listeners, we talk about the Enneagram a lot on this show.
Yes.
Rachel is a 7. So being the entertainer, there's also a component there where that is just so fundamental to your personality type, that you want to be in community and connecting with others. So no surprise.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's, thank you for saying that. That's probably why it's such a like driving force for me. And it's weird too, because I have other parts that are like, we don't want to be the center of attention. We don't want to be the person that leads everything. What are you doing? So there's parts that are conflicted about the summit. But that is where it started. Now I know that folks that go to these sorts of events Yeah, cool, Rachel. Community connection, sure. But I also want CEs. I also want answers to my questions. I want to hear from other people that know more than me or that are experts in areas that I don't know a lot about. Like you and I have both talked about that, right? So those components will also be included in the summit. I know that I can't just have a connection summit by itself.
How nice that would be. But there's other bonuses.
Yes, because we were talking about like, yes, we want answers, we want to learn, we may want continuing ed depending on our discipline. And we also want to be inspired. We want to feel like if they can do it, I can do it. So we'll have those components, but I will secretly be really happy about the connections. And we talked about this, I think, a few days ago, but the connections are typically what last. They are what can be dramatic, lifelong, I guess we could say. The information at these conferences and summits is cool, and we may use them and implement them. And I've learned so much from other folks, but the connections are sometimes what keep me going because I can like call on that person and be like, hey, are you experiencing this too? Like what's going on?
It's a shared experience and it's seeing someone light up right in front of you, whether it's the topic that they're speaking on or you're sitting side by side and you're nudging them like, did you hear that? Or the conversations you have after where you're processing everything. And when you're doing that in person, in real time with people that are doing the same thing, even winding up in the same breakout room with someone is an indication that out of all the options of where you could be at that conference, you chose to be in that room because that topic resonated. Yeah. So yes, all the way.
So maybe you're in a similar boat than me. Maybe we can connect. And so that for me, that's it. But also I hope that there is a little bit for everybody. Yeah. So I'm excited about it.
I'm excited for you. Yes, so fill everybody in. I'll include all the details, but tell people what it's called, where it is, and how they can be a part of it.
Yes, absolutely. So this, my consulting company is Next Level Private Practice, and the summit is the Next Level Private Practice Summit. So just add the word summit afterward. All of the details at nextlevelprivatepractice.com, details about the summit, details about some of the other work I do in consulting. So everything can be found there. The summit will be in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It will be at the end of last 2 days of September of 2025. And I'll just put a plug in for Grand Rapids because it's such a cool town to visit. One of the things that's very important to me too with the summit is that it's inclusive for all people. It's a safe space for all identities. I actually have an inclusion statement on the landing page. Like read that, agree to that, make sure that aligns with you because we do want to try to draw in some like-minded folks that believe in creating safe space for all, and it's okay to come in, be who you are, be vulnerable. And Grand Rapids is a good vehicle for this because it's a very walkable, nice city in Michigan, but there's also a lot of diversity and a lot of culture and art and beer. It's Beer City. So lots of breweries. So there's like so much to offer, and having a diverse space was at the top of my list too.
So, wow. Well, it sounds like such a worthwhile trip or ticket purchase. People are local. So I am so grateful that we connected in the way that we did, for the work that you do and how you do it, the way that you lead your team, and for all that you shared with everyone today. And stay tuned because she's considering a podcast, everyone. So if that, I can't imagine, would be any different than anything else you've set your mind to, it's happening. So happy to share the details when we have them.
And thank you so much for being my mentor in that regard and sharing with me your experience, because I do, again, that's just another way that we grow. Like we help each other, we support each other. And that can just be, even if it's a small thing, a big thing, it can be such a pivotal, I guess, component for our life, our business. You know, it has such ripple effects and great impacts on the people that we impact. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you again. If you like what you're hearing, please rate and review. This will help others find us and benefit as well. The Compassionate Climb podcast represents the opinions of Julia Napini and her guests. The information provided is intended for educational purposes only. and should not be taken as legal advice. If that is what you are seeking, please consult an attorney.